She thought moving to the countryside meant peace-wide skies, friendly faces, and quiet mornings. But the first time her neighbor saw her, that peace shattered. Strange notes appeared on her gate. Go back where you came from. Tire tracks carved across her yard like scars, every one a reminder that she didn't belong. By the time she set those spikes in the ground, it wasn't revenge she wanted, it was safety. What happens when the land you worked for becomes a battlefield, and the person threatening you hides behind an HOA rulebook? This is the story of how she decided she'd had enough. For years, Maya had poured her savings and sweat into restoring the small farm her grandfather left behind. Her days started before dawn feeding chickens, watering rows of collards and okra, breathing in the gentle rhythm of land that had once been worked under far harsher hands. The neighbors mostly kept their distance, their polite waves stopping at the fence line. To Maya, their silence was fine. She wanted space, not gossip. But one HOA meeting changed everything. A new neighbor, sharp smile and tighter tone, began questioning her standards, hinting her place didn't quite fit the community. At first, Maya brushed it off. Still, something in that room, the way eyes shifted, the way voices softened when speaking to her, left a shadow. And soon, that shadow would start crossing her property. It started with tire tracks, thin gravel lines cutting across Maya's farm road like unwelcome signatures. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone just took a wrong turn. But the second time, the tracks led right across her newly planted rows of greens. A week later, a car idled at her fence while she worked the field. The woman behind the wheel, the same neighbor from the HOA meeting, stared for a long minute before driving off. No wave, no words, just the slow roll power of a stare meant to remind Maya she didn't belong. Each night, the intrusion grew bolder. Headlights flashed through her windows after midnight. Fences she'd repaired were knocked loose. She'd call the HOA it was private property. After all, but each complaint turned into a lecture about community cooperation and shared spaces. When she pointed out no one else was being shared, one of the board members said with a stiff laugh, "Maybe you're just misinterpreting." The message was clear. We don't see what you see. Still, she tried to stay calm. She asked the woman politely one morning not to drive through, her voice catching as she balanced firmness with the quiet fear of being called aggressive. The neighbor's smile was thin, false. "I'll take whichever road I like," she said, pressing the gas just enough for the tires to spit gravel at Maya's boots. Every trace of courtesy evaporated with that sound. Word spread around the neighborhood that the new farmer was causing trouble. Next, HOA update accused her of violating landscape codes, too many tools out, too unkept a property. It was the same land her grandfather had left her for its beauty and promise. Now that legacy was under review by a committee that didn't want her or her history written in their soil. But Maya wasn't one to back down. She started documenting everything: tire patterns, dates, late-night lights, the way the same silver sedan cut through her field after every meeting where she spoke up. She sent photos, reports, emails, but nothing came back except silence or excuses. Then one dawn, a dull crunch woke her before the sun. She ran outside to find the gate flattened, fresh tire marks again, wet with dew. Her dog barked until her voice cracked from calling him back. Afraid what might happen if that car stopped this time, something in her broke quietly that morning. Not rage exactly, but a decision. If no one else would protect her boundary, she'd mark it herself. Hours later, she stood at the edge of her field, hammer in hand, laying down a line of reflective spikes, not to hurt, just to stop. A statement: this land remembers who it belongs to. She didn't know it yet, but that row of metal would expose more than a trespasser. It would show just how deep the roots of entitlement could run and what happens when one woman dares to dig them up. The morning after Maya planted her line of spikes, the air felt heavier, charged. Dew clung to the metal glints like a warning. She was inside brewing coffee when the sound came, an engine rev, sharp, defiant, tearing through her quiet. Then, a violent pop, metal scraping, tires hissing flat. Maya bolted outside. The silver sedan sat crooked at the edge of her driveway, its front tires deflated, spike strip gleaming beneath the bumper. And there she was, the neighbors, slamming her car door and shouting across the field, her accusations slicing the early light. "You did this on purpose. You people don't know boundaries. You people." Those two words felt colder than the steel beneath her boots. Maya stood frozen, the hot flush of fury mixing with a dangerous calm. She tried to speak, but the neighbor's tirade drowned her out. Within minutes, two other residents emerged, phones already recording as if waiting for the spectacle. The same HOA board member who ignored her complaints pulled over, shaking her head at Maya with mock disappointment. You should have called us instead of making a scene. A scene. That's all her pain ever became to them, a performance to be managed, not a truth to be heard. The sirens arrived soon after, red and blue flashing across brown soil her family had cultivated for generations. One officer walked toward her, his hand resting casually on his belt, not hostile, but not gentle either. Maya kept her hands visible, her voice steady, explaining, showing screenshots, photos, emails, proof no one had cared to see before. But as the words HOA rules violation left someone's mouth, it hit her. The system wasn't built to protect her land, only to preserve their control over it. The farm, the tire marks, the spikes, it all blurred into one truth. What they wanted gone wasn't her boundary, it was her presence, and as the cold morning wind carried the echo of those sirens, Maya realized this confrontation would mark her name in their records either as trouble or as testimony. The only question left, which one would history believe? When the dust settled, Maya wasn't arrested, just warned. The officers left after taking statements. The HOA promised an investigation. And the neighbors' fury cooled into silent, poisonous glares from behind drawn curtains. But the weight didn't lift. Each morning she walked that same stretch of land, her boots tracing the scars the tires left. The ground felt different, now less like property, more like proof. Proof that ownership doesn't always protect you when your skin color still comes with invisible boundaries. She replaced the spikes with stones painted by children from the nearby church, each one marked with a word: hope, home, enough. Neighbors she'd never spoken to began stopping by, some embarrassed, some angry at what they hadn't seen or chosen not to see. And in small ways, that fence line became more than a boundary. It became a conversation starter. Maya didn't get justice through the she got it through exposure. The photos she'd taken went viral on a local forum, then a regional outlet. For once, her story wasn't twisted to fit somebody else's comfort. It stood as it happened, tired, true. In time, she realized that her trap had never really been about spikes or cars. It was about forcing accountability to cross a line it had always avoided. But for every Maya who stands her ground, there are countless others whose names we never hear, whose stories get buried under bureaucracy, silence, and disbelief. So ask yourself, how many fences have been built on prejudice? And how many more will be crossed before we stop pretending not to see? Because this isn't just Maya's story. It's ours, the uncomfortable truth that equality means nothing until everyone's boundaries are finally respected.